Hey, everybody, welcome to the next episode. Actually, it's only the second episode of the KCC podcast that I'm calling Table Talk. This is a podcast where we will dive into topics of faith. We will dive into topics that go further of what it means to be a Jesus follower. Okay, I'm Philip, your host, and I get to be the pastor of Kalamazoo Community Church, which a lot of you are watching from over here in Western Michigan. All right, so this podcast is sponsored by our church here, Kalamazoo Community Church, where our vision is to know Jesus and to make him known. And this podcast is just one of the ways that we think we can do that. So we'll discuss hot topics, we'll discuss culture, we'll just have questions and more. I'll have some guests on here as well. So it doesn't matter if it is just you or if you're with a group of people or if you're on the way to work, listening in your car. These just short clips where we can just grow together. There are several podcasts that I listen to each week, and I'll probably share them on this one because they are just amazing. They've been established for a really long time. We're just kind of getting this one established, but they are great. And what I use those for is to grow personally, professionally, spiritually. They're great. It's kind of the way that people learn a lot nowadays because you can listen to it in your car, you can listen to it at the dinner table, you can listen to it as you're doing a bunch of other stuff. And the best thing is that these are recordings, so you can go back and listen to it again if there was something, not saying that there will be, but if there's something that maybe stands out to you. As I said before, I think I said this in the last one, maybe not. I'll have to go back and listen. I meant to say this in the last one, but Jesus left our spiritual growth up to us. He wanted us to grow. And as I'm in the office now, I don't know if you can hear them or not. We'll see how good this microphone really is. But our staff are all here, and all of us are trying to grow. Just because we're church staff does not mean that we have reached the top. All of us are growing. And one way to grow that I think every Christian needs, and just hang with me for a few minutes, okay? In fact, I think one of the ways to grow as a person, whether or not you're a Christian, is in the area of anger management. So Rick Villodas, you might want to write this book title down. Rick Villodas, in his book called The Narrow Path, says this: the question is not whether or not we have anger. The question is to what extent has it influenced our lives? Excuse me. People today are angry. And the issue is when those who follow Jesus, or those who claim to follow Jesus, are just as angry as everybody else. When there is no distinction between the anger you see online and those who claim to follow Jesus, we have a little bit of an issue. The Apostle Paul, if you're a Christ follower, you probably have read the book of Ephesians before, but he writes this letter to the church in Ephesus, and he says this: in your anger, do not sin. And then I've seen many husbands and wives quote this in their wedding ceremony. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. This is probably a good piece of advice to keep the devil out of your marriage. Just saying. Great job, the Apostle Paul. I personally try to do that. Hopefully you do as well. Now, Paul had the credibility to write this, okay? Often we don't listen to people who claim to be experts on something, but really they don't have any background on that topic. And with the age of social media and everything, people can actually claim to be experts. And just so you know, they might not be. They just might be paid a lot of money to say things. I want you to know that is not the issue here, okay? We're just having a conversation about Scripture, about things of faith. But Paul had a track record and experience for talking about this. So let me give you the reasons why. Okay, first, he was a Pharisee. You might know what a Pharisee is. If not, it basically means he was highly educated and he was looked upon very highly by culture, upper class for sure. All right, so that was the Apostle Paul. He was also well-traveled. He went around, all around, on this personal passion project of his, which the third thing, he was very passionate. Okay, he was passionate about imprisoning people and killing if necessary. Yes, his passion project was to eradicate the followers of the way, or followers of Jesus. And honestly, he was doing pretty good for himself with that. So why is he writing to encourage Christians? Now, some of you know the story, right? He has an encounter with Jesus and converts to a Jesus follower. Then he uses that zeal that he had to once imprison and kill them to now promote the movement he once tried to eradicate. He was fueled by anger at first, and he thought that his anger was justified, right? So how many of us have justified our anger as a Christian, right? It's biblical truth, isn't it? Deal with it. We often have what we often have are a bunch of angry Christians thinking they're doing the world a favor. All right, sound familiar? But what that anger is really doing is highlighting something that's wrong that we feel the need to correct. But our methodology is just not the right method. So can I quote Rich Villodas again? In that same book, in fact, in that same chapter, he says this: anger, in its healthiest sense, identifies what needs to be made right. Our anger functions as a warning sign for something that's not right, that we want to be made right, and when used correctly can open the door for the world changing for good. And this has happened several times already, but is it often used that way? No. Man, we get so sidetracked, don't we? We get so sidetracked by this and that, by our anger. We get so sidetracked by choosing a side. We allow our anger, and listen, Christians, I'm really talking to us here. We have allowed our anger to be exploited by politics and preferences. We have. It's just, it's what we do. But is there a way to use it for good? I think so. And I think it comes through a tool. It's something that we can all do. When you think of managing your anger, it comes through a tool known as self-awareness. It's part of being emotionally intelligent. Self-awareness. The self-aware person is someone who can get to the what's underneath of the anger. That's a self-aware person. Most of us, though, aren't self-aware. We just know we're mad, all right? You know you're mad. You might think you know the real reason why you're mad, but you're mad because of something that happened that triggered something deeper, right? That's the kind of stuff I want to go into in this podcast. But to practice self-awareness allows us to slow down enough to get to the constructive part of anger, because there is a very constructive part of anger. And I think that's what Paul's getting at in Ephesians. When I read Ephesians, all right, you can't stop the anger until you address the anger. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. He's saying address your anger. So when you start to get constructive about the anger and finding a solution to what's wrong that's making you angry, that's where it's helpful. Find the solution. Use that anger. Okay, but you and I, we won't get there if we're just labeled as angry people. And that's what I want to caution us in. All right, Christians, if you are part of our church family, or you're part of another church family, or maybe you don't even have a church family, whatever it is, if you're a Christ follower, we can't keep being labeled as angry people. And I think that's one of the things that's really wrong with our culture right now. That's one of the things that's really wrong with how people view church. But the sad part is that it's right. Like, they're right in thinking that. It's wrong that we're labeled as angry people, but they're right. We've just come across as really angry. So maybe for you, one of the things that you can do is practice being direct and not mean. There's a big difference, right? Telling it how it is not being direct. That's just being mean and not caring about somebody else's feelings, right? But being direct is stating the facts, acknowledging the person's feelings, and showing empathy, but also being clear. Andy Stanley once said, he didn't once say this, I've heard him say it several times, clarity is kind. To be clear is to be kind. So practice being clear and direct. Another thing is keep control. Oh man, we struggle with this, don't we? Keep control. Maybe for you, it's keeping control of your tongue and your keyboard. I don't even think it's our tongue that's the issue. I think it's our keyboard, because we just type so fast. The culture we live in, you see something, watch something, you hit one button that says repost, and you can repost it and say something about it. We are so fly off the handle today, aren't we, in some ways? But I don't want to just beat us up, right? Because what we are seeing a flood of people, and they're typically from the next generation. They're from the students who are starting to turn the tide on this, okay? But let me pause before we move on to closing this out, and I want to talk specifically to men. In fact, not just to men. I want to talk specifically to Christian men. When people think of angry Christians, most of the time they're men. You guys, come on. Let's rewrite the script, okay? We can do this. If you're part of our church family, and I'm assuming most of the viewers, however many views this podcast gets, will be from our church. So would you do this with me? All right. We need to talk about this from our platform when we're preaching sermons. We need to talk about this in our small groups. We need to talk about this at our family dinner table, or, if you're like most families and your dinner table is the van as you're going to practice, that's fine. Just talk about this. Christian men have to step up. And by stepping up, I don't mean defend Jesus. Jesus doesn't need defending. I'm talking about protect your garden, man. Protect the people that you're placed in charge of, or you're placed as a person of authority. All right. Use your anger for good, which means controlling it. Man, Christian men, I have met some really angry Christian men. And here's a little secret. I've been a really angry Christian man. Okay. It's so easy to do, but I think that's why the Apostle Paul's words are so important. Don't let the sun go down, man of God, while you are still angry. Okay. Seek to make it right. Get to the bottom of it. Don't just say I'm mad and leave it at that. Let's get to the bottom, okay? There's a million different scenarios with being more self-aware of our anger. Can you imagine, though, if we would just slow down enough to even allow ourselves to be aware of why we're even angry in the first place, what that could do for your workplace, for your church, for your family, especially what that could do for your marriage. Man, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. It's not the only thing, but it is a big thing. And I thought, the first content style podcast that we do or vlog that we do should probably be on anger. We should talk about anger because it's a big deal. All right. So I don't mean we have to push away anger and repress it. I just mean that we address it. All right. So let's do that together. Thanks for listening. I want to find out what it looks like to have a group of Christians, men and women, who are less angry and more self-aware, and I hope that you do too. And I hope that you'll join me on the next one by subscribing to this podcast or clicking on this link in our social medias, and we'll dive deeper into something else. Okay, and here very soon in the next couple, I want to have a guest with me as well. So thanks for watching. Love you. God loves you, and we will see you next time.